Joining me now, we got my pal Mike Sommers, American Petroleum Institute President and CEO. He's down in Washington, D.C. Mike, so tell us, most of this meeting or much of this meeting was televised. What did you read into it? I know you're on the phone with all these top CEOs. Give us your take on this.
Well, first of all, I think we were very heartened by the president's comments today. He understands that if Venezuela is ever going to be an oil power again, we need to reestablish the rule of law. We need capitalism to flourish, and we need security for America's oil and gas companies who want to go in there and start producing again. I'll remind you that both ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips had their assets expropriated over 20 years ago, and the oil industry has completely diminished in the country of Venezuela. In that same period of time, the United States went from producing 5 million barrels a day in 2007 to over 13 million barrels a day today. And so we're dealing with a completely different oil market than we were in 2007.
So I want to come to the U.S. story, too, because I think that's interesting. We're at 13.9 million barrels a day, according to the Energy Department, or 13.8. So we're almost a million barrels a day, and record natural gas production, too. It's really quite extraordinary. Come back to Venezuela just for a moment. All right, Chevron is still there. They had the licenses were kept open, et cetera, et cetera. Some sources tell me, they could increase production a little bit. But when you talk about ExxonMobil, it's a great company, Conoco, these are great companies, great American companies. Do you think they will dip their toe back into the Venezuela oil? They got burned, they lost their assets, they were nationalized, et cetera, et cetera. No one is certain about this Rodriguez government. So far, they've behaved. But as you said, Mike, we don't know about stability and security and whatever recourse. What are the odds that they will, come back in? I say dip their little toe back into the Venezuela oil. It's really oil. It's heavy oil, right? It's tar. But anyway, will they do it or not?
I think the American oil industry is very much interested in going back into Venezuela. We have to remember that they have significant reserves, probably not as many reserves as what they're saying they have right now, because they've been lying about those reserves for decades and decades. But there are still significant reserves in Venezuela. But we have to remember that there are two primary places where people operate in the country of Venezuela, where Chevron is, Maracaibo Lake, and where ConocoPhillips and ExxonMobil used to operate in the Orinoco Belt. The real find right now is in that Orinoco Belt. It takes significant resources to clean up the Orinoco Belt and to operate in Orinoco. So there's going to have to be tremendous investment. And that means we're going to need security guarantees down there, which the president talked about today. We also need a change in the country's laws. We need the rule of law to return. We need contract sanctity. And I was heartened today to hear the President of the United States talk about how important that is. The American oil and gas industry wants to help get Venezuela back on its feet. And we will be a stabilizing force, but we need some prerequisites established before we go back in.
Were you surprised that the president's willing to sell oil to China and to Russia, but it's got to be through the USA now? That's where, if they want Venezuelan oil or if they want American oil. I don't know if you were surprised at that. And do you suppose, I'm speculating here, the president was not specific. Will he eliminate these cheap discounts that they've been getting? I mean, China's been getting oil from Venezuela for almost nothing, for heaven's sakes. And I don't know the Russian story as well, but we're slapping sanctions on Russia, maybe secondary sanctions from Lindsey Graham. Why China and Russia? Why are we being so nice to them?
Well, there is an oil story here, but there's a geopolitical story here, too, as well. We need to make sure that the Western Hemisphere is taken care of. We need to make sure that our industry is safe to go back into Venezuela. Remember, a lot of the Venezuelan oil in 2007 was coming to the United States, but we've replaced that oil since then, since we got kicked out of the country. We get most of that so-called heavy oil now from Canada. not from Venezuela. We're interested in going back to Venezuela, of course, because our refineries use that heavy oil, particularly in the Gulf Coast. So we have an interest, of course, in going back in and using that Venezuelan oil, but we have to remember how much the industry and the markets have changed in that 19-year period.
We don't
want to
really
be dealing with the regime.
No, that's the thing that's so interesting. I agree with you. It's funny, like, this is, you know, as I said in my riff at the end, I don't really regard this as an oil story, even though right now it's being centered on oil. We don't need their damn oil. We don't need it. All right, this is just a means to an end of potentially rebuilding the country and raising some money and keeping the bad guys out. We don't really need them. Last question about Cuba. I think we should cut off the oil to Cuba. We could choke them off once. Cuba survives, right, on Venezuelan oil and money. And in return for that, Cubans set up a KGB-like protection, you know, Secret Service, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, like, we got Cuba by the short hairs, Mike. I'd say take them out, choke them off once and for all, Mike Sommers.
Well, remember where Hugo Chavez went when he was dying. He went to Cuba to get doctors there in Cuba. He came back and died in Venezuela, of course. But remember that the Cuban regime has been propped up by Venezuela for decades and decades. We have to also remember the people, both of Venezuela and Cuba, who've been suffering under these regimes for decades and decades. The American oil and gas industry wants to be a stabilizing force in South America and Central America, and we're excited about the opportunity to work with the president on this topic.
You think this is one hell of an action the president took last week? What do you think, buddy? This is one hell of an action. I don't know. Maybe, maybe you saw it coming. I did not. I mean, I am so much in favor of this. I've been jumping out of this chair all week long. I mean, this is historical greatness, if you ask me. But if some action, Mike Sommers, will give you the last word. Have some fun with it.
It was an incredible way to kick off America's 250th anniversary by showing America power all over the world.
That's wonderful. What a great way to put it. Mike Sommers, you're the best of the best. Head of the